Greetings, friends! Well, we recently got a delivery that I have been waiting for some time now. And we actually got a couple of different deliveries with a couple of different boxes, but this one box is the one that we have been waiting for. And we got some more of these right here, Tomahooks, which you really have been needing, by the way, because we got a number of tomatoes that we need to string up here since we do the hard pruning method, trellising up our indeterminate tomatoes. So right now, Lacie is behind me right now working on pruning the tomatoes before we can go ahead and string them up here on this trellis. So how's it coming along up here?
Pretty good. It looks like I'm really butchering these, which I kind of am, but they really need to be pruned.
And that's one of those things with pruning, it really looks like you're doing the plant or the tree wrong and harm and just ripping off the plants. Not that she's ripping them off, she's actually precisely pruning them. And that pruning really helps them to bear more fruit and not so much just leaves and looking pretty, but it actually forces the plant to focus its energies on producing more fruit and less leaves, actually.
This one right here really has gotten out of hand, and I'm kind of having a hard time figuring out which one I want to leave as my main stem. You can see it split right there. It split 3 ways right there.
So we're behind on getting to this one.
Yeah, we're definitely behind on this one. So I'm gonna find which one I want to keep and then cut the rest off. Because like this one hasn't even set any flowers. Well, okay, maybe some tiny ones right here. But for the amount of growth, like this should have set more flowers. So I'm just going to make a hard decision, and well, that one wasn't as clean of a cut as I'd like, but see, like all of this, we'll see there were some flowers. I couldn't even see them. But so many suckers have grown up that you can't even find the main stem. We're gonna keep this one right here as the main stem. And I know it doesn't look like much now, but that will actually help this plant.
So this is our high tunnel where we have most of our tomatoes growing, and we have just a little under 100 tomato plants in here. But actually in our greenhouse where we transplanted tomatoes earlier than we did in here, they already have fruit on those plants, and it's pretty exciting because those are tomatoes that we got from the Saltons at Polyface Farm, and it's so neat to see the little tomatoes developing on there. And we're actually getting tomatoes developing on our micro tom tomatoes too. They look so tiny and so cute.
There's a few in here that are started too.
Oh really?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're at. Oh, I see one right over here. Oh, there is one growing. These are a little bit further behind, but they're starting to produce fruit.
Oh, here's some more right here. These are just little tomatoes.
Oh yeah, look at there.
Yeah. So a lot of y'all have been leaving comments about how exactly do I prune a tomato plant, and so I thought I would show you right now. So right here you can tell this one has been kind of growing wild because it's got suckers that have developed and it's kind of splitting off. Oh, it's got fruit set on this one right here.
Oh yeah.
So the very first thing I do is I take off all the branches below this first fruiting branch. So all of these, you just take them off. So, and then see, I've already pruned this before, and you still get suckers that come up down at the bottom, and you have to take those off too. So you'll have to continue to do this.
And why do we cut everything below the fruiting branch?
Because the whole reason behind pruning is you want the energy going into the fruit and not all of the foliage. Tomatoes grow really fast, and they're gonna put their energy into growing the whole plant, but you want that energy going straight into the fruit for your harvest.
And typically the branches that are below the fruit are ones that aren't going to produce any fruit anymore. So there's no need to keep those branches on the plant.
And one thing that they will do is whenever you have leaves, let me see if I can find one on here. This one hadn't started to do it yet, but I'll just take this off so you can actually see. And I'll show you what normally happens is along in here, you're going to start getting little suckers that even come out from this branch, and all that's doing is sucking the energy out of your main plant. So it's trying to reproduce itself at all costs, and you want all that energy going into the fruit. So even at this stage, see, it has another fruiting branch right here. I'm just going to go ahead and take off these as well. Now, other people might not do it this way. That's fine. You can do it how you want. This is just how I do it. And then see, we've had a sucker from the main branch. See, here's the main branch, and we've had a sucker come off, so it starts to split. You need to decide which one of these you want to be your main stem, because if you don't, they're both gonna grow and get big, and then they're gonna split your plant, and that's not what we want. So this one looks the most straight. So I'm just going to come in here with my knife and just cut that off. So now we have a nice straight tomato plant. Oh, and I got one more thing to cut off. Here's another sucker that's popped up right there. And normally at this size and smaller, they'll just kind of break off. And you can do that. You don't have to have a knife.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and work on pruning these tomatoes as well as putting up the tomahawks. Here we go.
Anytime you have a sucker that grows up, and see, this is a really large sucker, you can actually plant this, and this will make a whole new tomato plant. So if you have a tomato plant that's going out of control and you cut the suckers off and you need to you want another tomato plant in your garden, what you do is you can just cut these way back, like I mentioned, to that just one stem right there. So see, this is the top where it's growing, and you can either put this in water inside and it can wait for it to root and then plant it, or what I've done, and it works, is you can just plant this in the ground, and I would plant it all the way up to there, because what'll happen is you'll get roots coming off the whole stem. So you plant it in the ground up to there, you know, or there, and then you're going to have a really good root system underground, and it'll look droopy for a little while, but just keep it watered good, and it'll come back and you'll have another plant. So here's an example of how tough tomatoes are. So I think the top of this tomato plant got knocked off because I don't see like the top, but what I do see is that this vine, or this branch, has been growing, and it was leaning over here on the ground. So look what it's doing. Right here, it's putting out new little plants all along this branch. And so remember, I told you a while ago that I couldn't, the other plant that I had didn't have this going on, but this is why. This will either save your plant is what it's trying to do right now, save itself. But see, we have a little sucker that's kind of come on right there. This one, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this off since there's no top to it, and I'm gonna let this sucker grow out as the top of this plant. And you'll find out that it will come back. So I know some people are really worried when they see me cutting so much off a plant. But tomatoes are one plant that are super hardy, and they will take a lot of pruning and a lot of battering. So we're just gonna keep an eye on this one, and I'm just gonna let this one right here start being the top of the plant, and we'll see how well it comes back.
Alrighty, so Lacie has pruned all the tomatoes. Now that I put up all the tomahooks here, now we actually got to go through and string and tie the tomatoes to the new tomahooks that I just put on there. Whew. And these tomahooks can really last a while. I really recommend them. I'll leave the link for them in the show notes below. But you can get like 3 to 5 years out of these things just because they're so long, and they're a really good tool to have. But we got some more tomatoes to go. But it makes me feel like a wuss when I think back to our recent visit with our friends, Farm Life Outfitters, spending time with Adam, checking out his greenhouse and all the different things that he's growing in his greenhouse, high tunnels, the tomatoes. It's just, he's growing so much more to me. I just feel like a wuss. Check it out. Wow, this is amazing. So this is what, 100-foot long greenhouse?
Yeah.
And what's the width of this one?
I think it's 26.
Okay. What varieties of tomatoes do you have? Oh, you got one that's ready. Wow.
Are those good? So these are Big Beef, which is an indeterminate variety, and then those are an heirloom purple variety.
Okay.
On that row, you can see the difference in how they grow and what they look like. The Big Beefs are very, you can depend on them to be very uniform and, you know, kind of grow the same. And then any heirlooms just kind of go crazy.
Yeah.
You know, they're very particular about temperature and weather, for sure. It has been nice having this thing. It's definitely worth it. I mean, most of this stuff I found in the scrapyard.
Oh, really?
So it's not like a kit.
Wow.
I mean, some of these poles, they were throwing them away.
Wow.
Brought them home and bent them and made them work.
That's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. And the lumber was the same thing. Just found it.
That's fantastic.
Thrown away. Yep. But I think it's probably worth buying one.
Now, did you bend the hoops with anything? Did you have a hoop bender?
I made one.
Okay.
I just cut out a piece of plywood in the radius I wanted it.
Okay.
And put 2 pieces together with a gap in the middle.
There we go.
And bend it over that.
That is neat.
Yep.
And all the tomatoes that you're growing here, will you sell those at a farmer's market, or how will you sell?
Most of them will sell from here.
Okay.
People come here and buy them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like a
Yep.
on-farm pickup?
Yeah. But we'll also go to the farmer's market. Try to support, you know, try to go out there and keep that lively.
There we go. So these are your cucumbers here, or you gonna just let those grow out?
Yeah.
Not trellis them? Okay.
Let's see what they do. Hopefully,
I see some little ones growing.
as the season progresses, they'll start pollinating them.
And you're just using a drip tape to irrigate them all?
Yeah.
Is that from Drip Works or Drip Depot, or?
That is Berry Hill Irrigation, I think is where I got that.
Okay. You're talking more since I saw you laugh.
Mm-hmm.
So So you'll be setting up that fan in here pretty soon?
I mainly used it when it was cold.
Okay.
I got that heater there, trying to keep the warm air stirring around.
Yeah.
Those cold nights we had, I was able to keep it about 38 or 40 in here.
Really?
But it was like staying with it all night, keeping the fire going. Yeah, it's tough. When it got down to, what was it, 27 one night?
That was rough.
Yeah.
It was not fun. That was that night. The temperature, the forecast, my gut feeling said it's going to be colder than what they said it was going to be.
Yeah, me too.
So I was like, I kept waking up every hour just kind of watching how the temperature was going, and I was like, about 3 o'clock, I was like, I need to get out there now.
Yeah, I was the same way.
So I got the fire going and watering the plant.
We lost a bunch. We lost a bunch on the end up there, and we lost a bunch out here.
Wow.
We lost 100 plants out here.
Wow. But you heated it, kept it going with just this wood stove right here. Tomatoes over here. So you started these from seed in January here in the greenhouse.
Yeah.
When did you transplant them into here?
I think it was the end of February.
Okay.
Somewhere about that time frame.
Okay. And then you also have these tomatoes as well, these field tomatoes, more of your bushing tomatoes here, right?
No, they're the same variety.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we just planted Big Beef and that heirloom purple this year.
Okay.
And these are in succession. So these were started, you can kind of see they get shorter as they go that way. So
yep.
we're hoping to have tomatoes for sale all year long. So we staggered the planting a little bit.
So between the greenhouse and out here, about how many tomato plants do you think you guys have planted out here?
How many do you think there are?
Oh man.
Take a guess.
4, 5.
There's 9 rows out here.
I'd say 900 to 1,000 plants.
Yeah, it's 1,200.
Man.
Yeah.
1,200 tomato plants. Now, is this the most you've ever grown tomato-wise?
Yes.
That's breaking records right here.
Yeah, last year we planted 600.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you will not be short on tomatoes this year.
That's right. Yeah, I hope so. I love growing them.
And I see you just mulch these with what is this? Just some
sawdust.
Sawdust.
Yeah.
Is that from your project over there? From?
No, this was from a friend of mine that had a pile of it.
That's great. Does he have a business doing that, or?
No.
Okay.
He had it somehow.
Okay.
He wasn't gonna use it.
I'm trying to find some too.
It is hard to find. It is hard to find. This spot right here, we've been improving it for 5 years.
Okay. Just working on building the soil up.
Yeah. When we first moved here, I made rows with the tractor. Made hills. And we haven't had the tractor in here since then.
That's great.
5 years.
And you just keep adding compost and organic matter to it.
Yep. How the soil just improves.
Keep working on it and tending to it.
See that? I mean, this is in the aisle. The best stuff's in the row there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's at least 6 or 8 inches of good topsoil in the aisle there, or in the row.
Oh yeah. That's great. You're just irrigating here with the drip tape too.
I kind of like it when it's drier for gardening. If you got a way to irrigate,
yeah,
it makes the plants grow a lot better.
Yeah. And sometimes tomatoes like to get a little stress to them.
Yeah, makes them grow better.
Now with your tomatoes, I see that you do pruning. Do you do the hard pruning method, or what is your style for pruning your tomatoes?
We just get the suckers out of.
Okay.
That's all we really do is the suckers.
All right.
And we will start pruning the lower limbs once they start. Producing fruit.
Okay.
Pull the lower limbs off.
Yep.
Is that hard pruning?
That's pretty much.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You gotta get all those limbs out of there.
That's what I was noticing, that they need the airflow, because especially with our area being humid.
Yeah.
And you get that moisture on those leaves and sticking on those leaves, and that just makes an atmosphere where they're gonna have disease.
That's right.
Which we have.
That's right. They produce so much better too. If you get them up to a single leader, get all the suckers out of there and get a single leader.
Yep.
And then get those lower limbs pruned off.
Yep.
So start producing fruit.
It's also easier to actually find your fruit too.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. You can see them from a distance.
Yeah. Whew! Finally got that done.
Finally.
Whew. And earlier you were talking about the shoots and the cuttings that you can get from the tomatoes will actually produce another plant. Well, while we were in there, this one was from last time. I think you had pruned those tomatoes. This one started shooting off roots.
Yeah, well, at the base of the tomato plants, they'll start putting off suckers, and this one was at the right at the ground, so it went ahead and started putting out roots. So you can take this whole thing right here and just plant it in the ground, and you'll have another plant. But I would encourage you to take off these, and like I said before, plant it that far in the ground, and then you'll have roots all the way down, and you'll have a more stable plant. So you can do it that way.
And we mentioned earlier that after you prune your tomato plants, they look like you just jacked them up. They look kind of bad.
They look really bad.
But,
and these look really bad because they went so long without being pruned. If you keep it up every single week, once a week, it's not gonna look like they've been massacred.
But still, the pruning process in general, it looks like, and it sounds in principle like it's just wrong that you're taking off the branches of a plant. A fruiting plant.
Yes.
It just sounds so wrong, and it just kind of looks like you're just tearing it up. But it's beneficial for it. And it also makes me think of all the different things that we do out here and all the gardening things. Yes, we're learning about gardening and how to do things and how to better care for theirs, but there's lessons for us involved in that too, that through the various life circumstances that we go through and the hardships, just the hardships that prune us and help us to really figure out who we are and what character we have, that's the life pruning is.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
And so that way we're able to produce more fruit. And you can be this really showy plant that has all these nice looking leaves on it, but it's not until you go through the hard things that it shapes you and forces you to produce fruit and to have more good character.
Because sometimes the big showy plants don't produce near the fruit as maybe some of the cut back, scraggly looking ones produce.
That's exactly right. Well, I know some of you may be saying, Mike, what you're growing in your guys' high tunnel, that's neat. And then Adam's, his is really, really neat, but I'm doing something so much smaller scale. Well, I suggest trying out maybe the micro tom tomatoes, but also here's another example of something you could do on a small scale for growing tomatoes. While I was at the Homesteaders of America conference in Tennessee, they were doing a lot of different hands-on shops, and Melissa K. Norris did one on how to grow tomatoes up a trellis. Check it out.
So you've got a little bit more of an arch there. So you can just do that to your preference. But this gives us a nice, we're going to be probably about close to 6 feet apart. So you've got some great growing space, and these are really, really sturdy. They're not going anywhere, and they're going to support your weight really well. One of the first things that you're going to want to determine if you decide to use these at home is what way the sun is going in the sky, and if you want this to be providing shade or not. So here for on Rory's property, we were here yesterday. So I was having to determine which way the sun goes here because I'm not familiar with this area. So we chose to do them this way because obviously the sun's going to come over, so that way both sides of this panel for the crops that we're binding on the outside are going to get hit by the sun, right? And then because it's from that direction, we'll still get some sunlight on the interior part of these crops. In the beginning, while these things are still small, obviously it's all going to get sun. But as we get more into the heat of summer, especially with the beans, they're going to climb all the way up on here, and there's going to be shade. So that's going to provide some shade in here. So if you didn't want any shade in here, then you can pick up on how you want to orient that. So it's going to depend upon what crops you're putting in there and the way that your sun is going. So there's no a lot of times I get asked on doing the trellises, do I need to run it north, south, east, west? It depends on what you're growing and how the sun is going over your property. You can do it either or. There's not really a wrong or right way to run that. It just depends on your property. So there's lots of different crops that you can grow with using the vertical method. So I like to plant the tomatoes on the inside. You could do them on the outside if you don't have any issues and you don't need anything to be covered. That would be up to you. But I like to put them on the inside because then I could still, we ran plastic, like I said, over here just to keep overhead sprinkler and water from the rain off of them, and it worked really, really well. So that's a way that you can do a really easy do-it-yourself hoop house, high tunnel. You could even put plastic, if you wanted to, on the sides to enclose that and make it hot. We didn't need to because we were planting them in summer, but if you wanted to incorporate that as a hoop house to grow over the winter, you totally could. So the other thing with some of your tomato varieties is if you're going to be picking indeterminate or determinate tomatoes. So determinate tomatoes are going to grow to a determined height, and you're going to get pretty much all of your production is going to come in about a 2 to 3, maybe 4 week period. So you're just going to get it all at once. Personally, I don't like to do that because I don't want to be canning all of those tomato products in when everything else is coming on from the garden in this little short span of time. So I like indeterminate varieties because they're just going to keep vining and growing until the frost comes and kills them. So I'm going to get a lot more tomatoes, and it's going to be more spread out, which I prefer, so then I can make a batch of sauce, I can do my salsa, and I can slowly can, because I've got beans coming on, I've got cucumber, I've got all other crops coming on that also need to be preserved, and I don't have to do all the tomatoes at one time. So if you're doing indeterminate tomatoes, which do need to have a support system and vine, this works really well because you can just, as it grows, then you can just put your leaves through there and let this be your support system as it goes. But then I also will trellis and just tie mine up to these as it grows, and so that it holds it and holds everything up. So it works really great as that type of a support system for your tomatoes. And like I said, I like to do it on the inside. I also just feel like it's easier to tie it and let it hang from here and then come in and pick the tomatoes off of there. And I usually do about 3 tomatoes per this section because these are gonna get really viney and bushy as the season goes on. So I wanna make sure you have adequate spacing. Anybody wanna come plant?
Yes.
Sweet. Come on in. I like it. Love it. Woohoo. So a lot of you guys may or may not know this, but when you're planting your tomatoes is one of the, you'll see like there are nodules all along this stem. Those will all become roots. So this isn't true of all plants, but it is with tomatoes. So we want to pinch off bottom leaves and we want to bury this baby really deep. So we're going to toss those out. So we're going to dig our hole here.
Okay, I'll take this one. Do you want the next one?
Yeah.
I'll do the next one if you want.
Awesome. Yeah.
Cool.
And then you want to make sure the hole is deep
Take that
enough.
one off too?
Yeah, take that one off. Yeah.
Oh,
Right?
I still use
Awesome.
Yeah. And then you'll want to go the soil depth like right up to that bottom leaf.
Leave this one on though, right?
And then once it develops some more, we'll prune that bottom one off later.
Okay.
And sometimes you'll have yellow leaves that are on the bottom. It's very normal. So these are the first leaves that come off of the plant when it's a little seedling, and those aren't the true leaves. So they all look the same when your little seeds start. These should turn yellow and fall off. Sometimes people think that means there's something wrong with the plant or it's lacking nutrients. These leaves will always fall off because they're not the true leaves, so don't be worried about them. Now this one at the bottom, it's yellow and it's kind of starting to die. When you've got a tomato plant that's this large and this small of a pot, they begin to have your leaves are going to turn yellow for a couple of reasons. It can be lack of nitrogen. They don't have enough nitrogen, which is probably the case with this because this is a small pot to be supporting this much of a plant. So we're just going to pinch that off. The other reason that you'll get yellowing leaves is insufficient watering, so either too much water or not enough. When it's a plant that's in this small of a container, it's likely it's just not getting enough water. So once you get them in the ground and you're doing nice deep watering with tomato plants, it's much better if you do a deep watering a couple of times a week rather than shallow surface watering every day or every other day, because we want the soil needs to be wet down low, one, to encourage the roots to go low, because tomato plants actually need a really good root system, a large root system, which is one of the reasons that we're breaking this off, to encourage more roots to develop along the stem here to support it. And also, when you have the soil watered down deep, that encourages the roots to go down deep, but it also, if you don't have water down deep in the soil where the roots are, that's how the plant draws up its nutrients. So if you're only getting the top part of the soil wet and it's not getting down deep, then the roots can't draw up the nutrients in order to feed itself. So that's why that watering deep is so important.
And since this workshop was a hands-on event, a number of volunteers helped Melissa with planting those tomatoes. Man, was that a great workshop. Not only was Melissa's presentation on the point, it was fantastic, but there was a number of other ones that were fantastic as well. But stay tuned, because I'm going to cover that in another video. Well, Lacey's watering her garden, and next we're going to be watering right here in the high tunnel here where we just pruned the tomatoes, because they really need some water. And speaking of water, earlier I mentioned that I had some other boxes that I was going to tell you about what's in them later. Well, now it's later, and I'm going to tell you about it. We actually have a drip irrigation system that we're going to be setting up for our hot tunnel here and in our greenhouse. So you're just going to have to stay tuned for that setup. Stay tuned. See you next time.